Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Wright, human cartoonist extraordinaire, and welcome to another interview for Universal Flaws of Robotics. For those of you unfamiliar with this project, we are currently running a Kickstarter to fund a comics anthology all about automata. We've got 19 stories by 24 different creators that range from humor to romance to transhumanist terror. And with us today is one of the newer creators to the group. Sam has been sort of peripherally involved since their partner was in the previous anthology, and this time managed to contribute Marky's Night Out, which is an excellent kind of little bit like punk themed and humorous slice of life comic, all about taking your robot boss out to a punk rave, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sam, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. It's finally cooled down in Boston. The summers are like they're not hot, but they're bad. So it's like it's always like armpit, you know. So it finally not be painful to turn off the AC for a little bit.
Sounds about right. I remember the summers right before I left New England being unreasonably hot, considering half the buildings didn't have AC.
I know it's strange. I don't know how they did it.
So this particular comic, one of the things that I find interesting, we were talking right before the stream started that you were trying some new stuff with the art on this. Can you tell us a little bit more about what brought that on?
So I hadn't been doing very many comics with color or even necessarily with words at that time. Like my primary comic is Nite, which is all black and white, and it's very like woodcut. It's hatched to heck and back, and so I wanted to go with a different like coloring style because I've done colored comics before, but I was always very like straightforward with it, where I would like pick up a palette and then I would like shade everything the same way, and I would like come up with a formula. So for this one, I just thought, I would lay down some like loose kind of like, I don't know, they're kind of tight lines, but they're not like super precious. And then I would just like do a rough palette for every single panel, and then it would just wind up. I would just like play it by ear because it's like kind of how I watercolor paint. I would do it in a more traditional kind of way, and I think it worked out pretty well.
It really did. I'm honestly shocked that you don't normally work with color, because like the color balance in this and some of the choices you make are really very cool. Hold on, let me bring up one that has a very different color palette. It's funny because it kind of reminds me, one of the cartoonists from my year at Center for Cartoon Studies was Casimir Lee, and they do great dual color comic stuff. I remember finding out at one point they're colorblind. Like they actually have, I don't remember which colors it is. I don't think it's red-green colorblind. I think it's another type, but they were putting out these incredible comics and just weren't seeing it the same way as everybody else, but it just worked so well. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, like a lot of times like less is more. Like I tried to not have too many like colors in any of the character designs. Like I kind of like built the designs for the characters in reverse, where the design of their bodies with the colors that they do are like in service of the panel. So I kind of like built it backwards. But and this one I kind of I forget if we still have them somewhere, but I laid out every single panel as like a different like block of color to kind of do it in like an emotional way. Like I wanted all the flashbacks to be this kind of like sea foam, and like the first page is I guess like the realistic color where everything's kind of like blown out and pale and like red, white, and blue.
It's interesting. So you're saying that, like, to a degree, you thought of the colors before you even thought of what it would look like.
Yeah.
That really does feel like the backwards of how I usually hear it. And you were that was going for emotional tone more than anything, or?
Yeah, I wanted the tone to feel like kind of heightened and emotional. I'd read like some like French comics where it seemed like if you used like a more expressive color, you could get away with not putting in as much detail, and detail is what takes a long time. You can spend 30 seconds and find like, oh, the perfect shade of green.
It's funny because I'm also noticing how much the color of the text is helping make things clear. I really like that you did different text bubble colors for different people. I like that it changes depending on flashback and stuff like that. Like, my guess is you just put yellow over the blue text box to get it to that kind of green.
I might have actually gone and like selected it like specifically. I did a lot of color picking in this one. I didn't want to do a lot of like overlaying or mixing. I wanted to like find the nice colors when I did it. So like basically every design of scene like has its own individual palette. Like I'll reuse the same like orange over there because I want it to look like unified, but I don't usually mix it like traditional paint where I'm putting like a yellow over like a blue to create a green.
Right. So let's talk about the actual content of it. I like that what you ended up doing is taking the robot Marky to a punk club. I'm curious if that's a scene that you're normally a part of, if that's something you have a deep connection to, or if it just happened to fit with the story.
Like I usually go to like heavy metal shows, which are a lot less politically driven. They're maybe like a lot less visually interesting. They're a little bit more casual, I suppose. But I've been to a number of like underground punk shows, and they have a specific kind of atmosphere where like anything can happen. The lead singer will like jump down and talk to people and scream at them. Everybody looks really wild, and like every band has like a lot of like very very overt messages, and they'll say like really like provocative political statements. And like I'm not like super part of the scene, but I thought it was like an interesting like juxtaposition, because a lot of those people, when you like connect with them, they're really like normal down to earth people, and it's just like a context where they're like really in your face.
Yeah, one of the things that I've increasingly learned, because I've never been part of either the heavy metal or the punk scene or any of those, but the more I've learned about them, the more I've discovered, oh, these are extremely welcoming, wholesome, and accepting places in a weird way. They're just very blunt about it.
Yeah, like it's like
they're. I'm just saying it's fun with kind of uptight robot character that's like, let's take him someplace where he'll immediately be accepted.
And like that's the kind of idea behind it, that the robot is already part of their life, and he kind of exists only to annoy them. And he's really uptight, and he micromanages their like time clock usage, and they pine for like when they had a less efficient kind of boss who's like a normal guy, and they think they can kind of create their old boss by exposing Marky to that kind of idea of thinking. But I think it's like, I wanted it to be kind of like a critique of like a usual kind of story. Like I think in like the first panel, Chris brings up obliquely the plot of like Short Circuit, where like Johnny Five gets like hit by the lightning bolts and is free from his programming to learn how to love. That
I do remember seeing that and loving that you made that reference. I remember watching that while growing up. There's the moment, but I saw that and I immediately was like, "Yes, Johnny Five is alive."
I like these kind of like media, I think media maybe should be like a little intertextual, because like we're exposed to like so much like interconnected advertisement and like meta commentary within movies. Like what is it like today, July 29th, like 4 days ago, like Deadpool 3 comes out, and it's nothing but references to like old Fox movies from like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I think like
so.
Yeah, no, go
ahead. No, I was just going to say that I absolutely get that, and I also love the subtle way of bringing it up without saying the name. Like it could have been just talking about something you made up, but the people who will catch the reference will all immediately know what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like one of the things that came up. I believe Kat is the one who'd suggested this originally, but it actually pitched the name Short Circuits for the anthology, and our concern was, the previous movie. We didn't want people to think it was a fanzine. Which is a shame, because it's also a good name for a robot anthology.
I mean, I guess that's like another like funny thing. Like I don't know if it would have mattered unless the owners of the movie rights are super litigious, because like the character Sean is like not very media literate. I guess like neither of our main characters are especially media literate. They've only seen like old movies and like anime, and they're not particularly thoughtful.
Well, I don't know. They read to me as fairly young, so I don't think it is too much of a problem yet.
Like Sean's pretty young. Like they're both kind of like
I'm sorry, I just had a computer glitch. Did you freeze too?
I also froze, but I decided not to say anything when it happened. No, they're both composites of a number of coworkers that I've had over the years. So they're I've known a lot of people like Sean who are like young guys who are not really interested in their job, but are like keener on keeping it because they're not quite sure how much they get away with. And then there's like the Chris's who are like they're getting up there, and they're kind of like lifer slackers. I mean, I guess some of that's like me, but like there are other guys who I've worked with who have been more so. Are they
all right? Quickly from the chat, Dolls of the Cat saying hi.
Oh, hi, Cat.
That's Cat. Hello. We've got another person from the group in the chat. So one of the other things I was interested in is, since you actually are partners with one of the other cartoonists we've interviewed, Catalina Rufin, have you guys ever worked on a project together?
No, we actually really haven't. I think we have in some ways like very different like what I call it, like methods for creating comics. Like when I work on like a comic that has to have dialogue or has to be like within a certain like page range, I almost always start from the end and then like build it backwards, and create the designs as I'm going, and like fill in pieces between the beginning and the end until it feels kind of seamless. And Kat has a more like conventional like workflow that involves like, you know, designing the characters, and then you thumbnail it straight ahead, and then, you know, kind of like finish it all together. You do the inks and then you do the paints.
Right. It almost feels like each of you has processes that are exact opposites order-wise. Are you able to proofread each other and things like that? Do you run ideas by it, or is it just so different you just wait till the product's done?
I mean, there usually is a point where we both have scripts and we'll show each other pages, because like I have a lot of like gags, and so like, you know, the first time you write a gag, you're like, oh, this is amazing, I'm so smart, and then like you know, by the time you letter it, you know, you're like, is this even anything? Does this read? And so you have to like pull somebody over to say, hey, look at this, and you watch their faces to see, you know, they're smirking, you know, is it funny?
Which is so much harder because you're staring at their face while they're trying to read.
Well, as long as they don't make like.
So is comedy a genre you play in a lot?
Not as much. I think, you know, almost like I understand like comics almost like music, where it has to be like, it has to fill a certain rhythm and have a kind of like call and response, which means that I've forced myself to kind of have like a point every page. And so if I can't like make some kind of like important plot statement, I'll say, okay, the page justifies itself through a joke or something clever. And like through the Nite books, it's usually like physical comedy or slapstick or something else, because they're silent. I don't put any words in them. So this was an opportunity to like space like, I don't know, like pauses and different kinds of emphasis, because I'm using the word balloons, and I get to, you know, explore more with wordplay. I had a little bit of fun with like some different text styles and like ways that the characters talk.
That's interesting. I guess I'd somehow missed that you don't normally do text. That's another thing you've been playing with, because your text also looks great. You do a lot of interesting, like you like I said, you bring color into the text balloons. Some of the actual text you do block letters for and color them in different ways. It's like it's very funny to me that it's not something you normally play with, because you do really interesting stuff with it.
I think right before starting, I had got the Nartoons book by James D. Stanton, and like I'd really enjoyed like the way he used like the word balloons and how their tails would be all over and they would feel really solid, and how the text worked in a certain way. And so like I've never liked how any like fonts like looked in any of my comics, so I always have to hand letter, and I make myself do like really deliberate lettering, because otherwise, you know, I don't like it, you know, because my normal like writing is like scratch, so I almost draw the text.
That's funny. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to look, but yeah, hand lettering. Another thing that is always impressive to me, because I also have terrible handwriting. And I'm like a long time ago, it's like, I'm just going to make a font based on my handwriting so the kerning looks right. But yeah, it just, a lot of attention to detail went into this. And you mentioned also like simplification of detail, which I do see in places, but there's Cat's story.
It's a body electric.
Yeah. By the way, completely unintentional, but I put your stories next to each other. Like I didn't even think about it, but like you guys are actually adjacent.
I hope they work thematically. I think it goes pretty well.
We try to do a mix with the stories. We kind of want to do a flow of like art. So you get different art styles, you get different tones and things like that. And it just so happened that like the slightly more muted, serious, hopeful story that Kat did worked really well next to the much goofier Marky's Night Out.
Yeah.
Like it fit well.
Yeah, the colors get really expressive near the end of it, so it's like probably by the end kind of a like I don't know, a contrast.
Yeah. I also another moment where I'm shocked you don't work with color much. Those headlights look great.
I mean, like I do like a certain amount of professional illustration, and I really like to do these kind of like photographic, like blowout kind of things. I wasn't sure how well like the headlights or the lens flares would work, so I'm really I'm really glad you like it.
That actually reminds me of another thing I wanted to bring up. Let's see if I can swap the screen. So one of the things that ended up being a discussion in the main Canon Right Discord, we were a while back. We were trying to design the cover for this anthology, and you actually kind of redesigned based on the art we had, and people liked it enough. That's basically what we went with. Let me get this brought up. But it was interesting because you brought up very specific design aesthetic things related to cover design, which I personally found very interesting. I also like how this is randomly syncing up very nicely with the background we have on the stream.
Yeah, it almost like works continuous a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little off, but it's surprisingly close. In fact, I'm going to make this a little bit wider just so people can see what we're dealing with. But yeah, we originally had the image of the four robot heads pretty much centered on the screen, very much like how we've done our previous anthologies for anyone who's familiar with that. Like text at the top, centered image, text at the bottom. And Sam submitted an alternate suggestion, basically this layout. And immediately the group started talking about this. And it's been very interesting because this is very different from what we normally do. And I found it like, what prompted you to try a side look like this?
I'm trying to think. I think there's like a couple other like anthologies I have where there's like it's where they have like centered images that are kind of blurry, and there's something about them that reminds me of, because like they're all like self-published. I mean, like even my books are like self-published vanity projects, but I think there's something about like not doing like a full bleed that like reads as like unconfident or something. So I feel like if you like really double down and you like arrange it so like, yes, this is full bleed, we took the entire project design, you know, like this is a floppy that I made, this my book. So you see that like the illustration goes all the way up, and then you know it's like it crosses over the back, and so that it feels really deliberate, like product design.
That's one of your illustrations?
Yeah.
Can we see that again?
Yeah, this is I think this is the 2018 one. It's kind of a Death Dealer like homage. Like they fight a bunch of like Viking frogs in that. I mean, like this still bugs me. It's like MC Escher hand, but everything else I really like about it.
That is like some Frank Frazetta style stuff.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like an homage. The interior art is all just like black and white, but no,
yeah,
it's
funny.
I looked at like old. I think I got like a Jack Vance book from a friend, and like a lot of the art, even if it's like really messy or really gestural, it'll be full bleed. It'll like capture the entire object of the book. And then I don't know, they do all these like line breaks because they want to say like the winner of the so and so prize, or like the so and so book from award-winning author. And so I kind of wanted to, I don't know, do something that reminded a little bit more of that without like completely messing with the art.
Yeah. By the way, Kelsey's volunteering that is a dope cover that you shared.
Oh, thanks, Kelsey.
But yeah, it was interesting because it did kind of push us outside of our comfort zone, and we ended up deciding that we liked it. There was definitely some debate about it in the chat, and in fact, if you do prefer the like seeing the full image on the front cover unaltered, we are actually doing that for the hardcovers because we actually realized the seam would screw up the art if we did this method. But the paperbacks will look the way that we showed you. And it's also funny that like we're talking about a centered version, and I realized I'm using one of our old books as a mouse pad, so I can show an example of what we're talking about with something being centered. Like we would have had the full image right there. Art by Kelsey D. Crawford. Thank you very much, Kelsey.
I really do like the what the gnomes know, but because like the text is on the hat, and it does like it fills the whole frame of it.
So filling the whole frame was the biggest objection. It sounds like.
I think that's what really got me the most. It's like the filling the whole frame, and that it's like a single symmetrical object that doesn't like feel like the composition doesn't have a border in any one places. But when it's up against the spine, now it has a border. It's now the whole book is the composition.
I want to see if I can bring up an example. This won't be exact proportions. I think I'm the best thing I can grab is a flyer. But just as an example, here, this should work. Wish there were an easier way to switch screens. So using this as an example, this is one of our advertising things, so it's not the exact proportions. But does the fact that you've got the flames going all the way to the edge make it better, or is there still the symmetrical issue?
I think that improves it a little bit. I like that it feels like it has a border. The digital flames could extend forever. There could be more stuff. I think it does make it feel like a more concise, like composition, like, you know, like that's what like my second pitch was, to make it like really, really big. Yeah.
That definitely gets tough because we don't want to lose all the detail JM put into the art. Art by JM Hunter, by the way. Because he actually was thinking a lot about the emotions of each of the faces and stuff like that. So we wanted to make sure that would at least get captured somehow. But it has definitely been an interesting challenge, and we've been rethinking a lot based on the conversation we had about that other cover. But yeah, it's nice. I'm going to be rethinking how I do all my covers now, because I tend to do the centered thing a lot. Just because, I don't know, in my head it tends to be classic. But it was really cool seeing that and being like, oh, this feels like retro, like late 1960s, early 1970s science fiction.
Yeah, like I hate to be like the mean guy, but like I do, like when I walk past all the other tables at the comics show, I'm like, oh, I mean, like everybody's got their you know, their OCs in like a composition, standing together smiling. So it's like when it's when you do something that's like a little bit off, or something that looks like something else, that I like. That's when I start looking at the table. So I bring my own kind of like judgy sensibilities to everything. Sorry, everybody.
No, totally understandable, especially since apparently you can draw like Frazetta when you're doing like on that one comic. It's funny. Are there any particular cover artists or artists in general that you tend to think about when you're trying to do this kind of stuff?
Let's see. I mean, like in terms of like interior comics, like for illustrations, I'm always like doing, there's the big like fantasy guys that are like Frazetta and Ken Kelly. I copy a lot out of like, not like copy, but like I borrow a lot of like compositional sensibilities from like Paul Bonner, and like not even his like Warhammer stuff, like his like Mutant Chronicles stuff that like nobody in the United States has ever seen. For like interior stuff, I wish I could be like Richard Corbin or like I mean, like I did like I'm trying to think. Like I try to just like be really loose all the time, but I want my like interiors to look like Richard Corbin's comics, like where they're kind of like two-tone and the color, the textures are really kind of like nasty, but it feels really solid when it renders.
Yeah, I absolutely get that. It's very much like the classic high fantasy / sci-fi of, the random shirtless barbarian fighting off the hordes type.
Yeah, like I almost
on a planet with a strange moon.
I almost want to be doing like a heavy metal comic whenever I work on anything. And like when you open up one of those old things, like okay, maybe one thing will be like Mobius or Droyer, but like half of them will just look like Marky's Night Out with like washed out colors, and it'll be like a sex joke about a robot alien that was poorly translated from French. I'm like, I don't like this. I mean, like I guess they're like, you can still like look up French people if you want to learn their language, but I can. I'm going to keep borrowing from them until that happens.
So a lot of what we've seen from Marky's Night Out, which obviously was a robot anthology that kind of cornered you a little bit, but the sample you also showed had a fantasy look to it. Are sci-fi and fantasy places you play a lot, or is that normally out of your wheelhouse?
I guess they are kind of, because it's easy for me to make like allegorical points with sci-fi and fantasy. For this one, I wanted to make it like a little bit less conceptual than the normal robot story. But in a lot of times, if you want to, create like art that critiques like religion or capitalism or any like weird kind of thing without like scaring anyone or risking like annoying people who have actually read like books of philosophy, then you can go into sci-fi or fantasy or weird fiction where you can use magical realism all you want and not have to explain it. I like those genres. For writing, I don't do a lot of like nonfiction yet, maybe.
Well, you seem to play with it well. I also like the idea of Marky's Night Out not being meant to necessarily be commentary, because I immediately read this as this is probably about capitalism.
It's mostly about like specific feelings I have specifically on the kind of like automation that I've had to endure as a retail adjacent worker in the last 2 years. Like Marky is based on a product that was rolled out in the Stop and Shop supermarkets in Massachusetts after their shelf stackers went on strike in 2020. And it doesn't do anything. You may have even seen one, Ben. They're pretty tall, actually, not like Marky, and they have like a face, and they scoot around the halls spying on people.
I have seen this. I've been bringing this up in some of the streams. BJ's Wholesale is using them for restocking and like inventory management. Like I was actually going to bring that up again because kind of Marky's design, but that was originally brought in as it was basically a robot scab.
That's when I became aware of them. It can't quite exactly be a scab because I guess part of the critique of Marky itself is that he does no work. He's counting the stock, but he does not put it on the shelves. Somebody has to come over and do it.
He's more supervising them while all this stuff happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not really, saving. It's not making productivity more likely. It's more like cracking the whip. It's an automatic micromanager.
Well, that goes neatly into something that I've also been bringing up during all these interviews. One of the hottest topics right now is automation and generative AI. And it sounds like you have a very personal take on a lot of automation stuff. And I'm curious if you can give us some more of your thoughts on that.
I think in the retail world, it mostly exists as like things that make you download apps so that they can track you and then restrict your ability to like purchase different things or your customer options under the guise of convenience. I don't like generative AI. I don't really think of it very often. It's in this weird like zone where in 2024 it seems like it's not actually very profitable. So it's not like it's making a lot of like jobs like harder to make money doing, but it's not achieving a lot of its stated goals, and it's not making a lot of money. But it does unfortunately have like strategic importance, and so it has the ability to make like the internet a lot worse, to make it a lot easier to forge videos, forge incriminating evidence. So even if like civilian development of AI ceases because it doesn't make money, it'll probably still exist in like the defense sector in some kind of like creepy way where like the FBI can like forge a blurry video of you like doing a crime.
Moving it out of the civilian neck of things is very disturbing take. I get it completely. Yeah. But yeah, we've been seeing outside of AI itself, automation in general affecting retail a lot, even beyond the potential of. I know we brought up that it wasn't actually RoboScabs, but now I'm thinking RoboScabs would be a great comic. Mm-hmm. But it like going to things like self-checkout, going to things like nowadays when I go to the grocery store, I can actually pull out a scan gun that I carry with me while I shop instead of having to interact with a human at all. They seem to be making it harder to interact with a human in a lot of ways. And I'm curious if that if that continues to feel negative, or if you think there are benefits, or if you think this is just overall bad.
I think in general, like the idea of the self-checkout is not inherently like negative per se. I suppose like the part of it that I'm surprised like doesn't bother anyone is that they've taken this job and now you have to do it. You the customer get to bag your own groceries for free.
It is a funny way to put it. And it's also funny how many people I know would be like, I don't have to interact with a person. Sure, I'll do it. But yeah, that's absolutely true. In a lot of ways, it's forcing people to do more work as a convenience, which feels like the problem of a lot of automation in general.
I mean, like that's mostly how it gets rolled out. Like the Martys and the Markys of the world are not. They're control disguised as convenience. where they'll give you the job of the bag the bag boy, and then they'll make sure to monitor you so that you don't accidentally get something good. I guess that's the I guess thesis maybe of Marky's Night Out, is that they got rid of Tim, the freegan like food waste donating manager, and replaced him with Marky, who is more efficient but also doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And
Kelsey brings up there's a reason why company bosses want to cut labor costs, because they don't want to pay full price for labor. Just to bring up an example of what we're talking about, let me get this on there. This is from page 1. Like Marky is straight up just texting them whenever they notice that they're talking to each other on the shift or doing anything that is in theory something they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, this is a thing I remember a lot of my coworkers at like the oil change complaining about, is that they had a mandatory break and management would just like put it on them. And so, for half an hour a day, they were just, they couldn't go home, but they weren't getting paid. So this is the kind of like evil dystopian, like, oh, Marky will clock you out and have you not being paid, if he sees you slacking.
It is one of the things, like going back even before a lot of it was necessarily automated, but I worked in call centers about a little over 10 years ago now. Wow, I'm old. And
that's been automated, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's like everything your time is very carefully regulated. You have to be, at your desk early, clocked in. You have exactly 15-minute breaks. You have exactly 45 minutes for lunch. You have exactly another. And you can get written up if you're off by a minute. Like going back a long time, this stuff can get very strict. And the idea that it can be much more constantly monitored, like you could figure out a way to deal with logging into a phone.
Yeah.
Not that I ever did. UPS don't come for me. But the idea that you'd have something of possible sentience that is just constantly monitoring you like that is upsetting.
I mean, I guess like one of the themes that I wanted to go with Marky's Night Out was that I wanted to be kind of sneaky and iconoclastic. Iconoclastic. Maybe that is how you say it. So Marky actually is not sentient. He says like a number of things that through obstinance and curiosity they ignore, because he's lying to try to get sent back. And then it's fine, they introduce him to Tim, and he tells Tim, oh, the only reason to do any kind of enterprise is to earn maximum return on investment, which I guess is like the dark climax. And then he lies about having watched Naruto to get them to let him go. Like Marky has not watched Naruto.
That is kind of funny. That actually reminds me, you brought up a very good word in the chat a little while ago. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it's the effect of seeing faces and things that don't have faces.
Pareidolia.
Pareidolia, thank you. That's kind of feels like the situation with Marky and with these real-life stalking robots, where they're given this super cute face to try and make people accept them as a little bit more human.
Oh yeah, like Marky's cuter than any of the real Marty robots. But it's the idea that it's Sean and Chris who are like humanizing Marky, and that he really never does anything to earn this. It's just their inherent good natures that kind of embark them on this foolish errand.
Absolutely. One thing I did want to throw out, we are at the 45-minute mark. If chat has any more questions, now's a good time to put them in the chat. We are keeping an eye on that, and we will bring it up if we see them. But yeah, I'm curious, what other projects have you been working on? Is this the most recent comic you've done? Is there another one on the back burner that you've got going, or?
I just finished a submission to the Fantology anthology with Kristen Scholl and Emily Zay, who I think are also Center for Cartoon Studies related. And so I just finished that like last week, and it's a kind of a love letter to those old magazine fold-ins.
Oh, nice. Yeah, bring out all the comic nerd stuff while you're in a group of CCS people. But yeah, with Fantology, I've been hearing a lot about. Like, it's one of the other big up-and-coming and somewhat well-established indie anthology groups. Got a bunch of members who've done something for them, so we gotta get working with them at some point.
Well, they're really good. They're really eclectic. I don't have one within arm's reach, but if I did, you'd be seeing it.
Yeah. The story you did, is it anywhere near the tone of Marky's Night Out, or did you go completely different?
I think it like visually it's a similar kind of tone. It's called like Folding Maps, and it's black and white, so it doesn't have the same kind of texture work, but a lot of the line work is pretty similar. I broke one of like my Marky rules, which is to be kind of like simple and concise, because there's tons of foliage everywhere, which is one of my fatal flaws.
Oh, making foliage takes forever.
Yeah. Like if I have the opportunity to draw like a jungle or a crumbling ruin or like a million cobblestones, I'll just do it. I'll just take 1,000 years.
Is it at all like the Mike Mignola look, like those heavily textured, stylized ruins, or?
Like I really envy the people who can do the Mike Mignola thing, because like, you know, he's so good at like spotting blacks. Like half of a figure will be like completely dark, and it'll just work. It'll feel like it's totally solid and it's totally in the atmosphere, and it feels so cool, because like whoever is doing the colors on it like knows how to make everything pop.
Yeah. There's something, I'm trying to see if I can find a good example of it. But one of the other people in the group, Angela Boyle, once pointed this out to me. And it from Mike Mignola, and it completely changed how I do backgrounds. Whenever he does like cobblestones or any kind of repeating pattern like that, he only does it around the panel border, like right around the edge of where it shows up, and towards the middle, it goes away. And it's completely changed how I draw.
Oh, it feels really smart. Like it doesn't interfere with the like the silhouette of the characters on the page.
Yeah. I should just realize an example I can bring up. In the meantime, Kat brought up, what's a genre of comic you would never want to make?
Gosh, a genre of comic I would never want to make. Just like I was thinking like a Jack Chick tract, but that might actually be kind of fun if I could write it. But
yeah, I've worked at 8th Letter. It's actually a really interesting size to work at. I don't recommend necessarily the content, but it's an interesting comic size. So is that what you're referring to, specifically the size, or would you actually want to parody the topic of a Jack Chip track?
I feel like, you know, it's funny enough to parody. I don't think I would enjoy like if I got like commissioned by Jack Chick to do a track. I think like that would be torturous. I'm trying to think.
Well, I've got good news. It can't happen.
Oh, that's right. He's been dead for a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
maybe like 10 years. I don't know. I don't read them by will. Like I remember they used to get like dropped off at like a movie theater I worked at, and I would sometimes like wind up like cleaning them up and keeping them out of like morbid curiosity.
Yeah, like I'm kind of the same. Anytime I got my hands on a chick track, I'm like, awesome, I have a chick track. This is terrible, but it's fascinating, weirdly. Like it's good comics, just terrible subject matter. Like, if that makes sense.
Some of them have really good cartooning. Some of them have surprisingly inept cartooning.
Well, he had multiple people who were doing it. He wasn't doing all the work. Just to bring up very quickly, this is actually from one of my comics, but I did the Mike Mignola thing, so I didn't have to do all of those cobblestones. That's sort of what I'm talking about.
See, I've become like really a big proponent of object and foreground obscuring most of the mid and background.
Yeah, that's a Tilly Walden trick. Tilly was in my class at CCS, and part of the trick she said when she does like those big, it seems like complicated backgrounds, she's like, one of my favorite things to do: have a doorway, have a person in the doorway. They take up so much space, you draw way less of the background. I've started doing that so much because it saves you so much time.
Like I love silhouettes too. Like there's so many things. Like if you actually go ahead and like read the new Nite comic, you'll see that like a lot of it is like just like pig-headedness. Like look at all of these darn like lines that I drew for no reason.
Oh yeah, that were you using nib on that?
This is digital, so my nib is plastic.
Gotcha. Yeah, the texture on that almost makes me think of like Junji Ito and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've learned the important thing is that like when there's a ton of overworked stuff, like it almost makes like the not overworked stuff more important.
I get that. Like it basically is like you've got a white space in the middle of the field of detail. It's another way of making it stand out.
Yeah. And so I had it backwards, like when I started making these back in like 2016, where I was like, oh, you know, the most important part of the comic will be like super duper drawn, and like it's kind of the reverse of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting pretty close to the hour mark. I think that's not a bad time to start wrapping things up. Sam, where can people find you on the internet?
Gosh, I'm still on Twitter at really Robocorn. I'm still on Tumblr at Robocorn. I'm on Newgrounds. I'm trying to be on Newgrounds more often. Also as Robocorn. I started building this brand in like 2013, and it has not taken off. But I'm gonna keep doing it.
Hey, people will always be able to find you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. As a reminder, we are doing this as part of the Kickstarter for Universal Flaws of Robotics, a comics anthology all about automata. We have 19 stories that range from humor to romance to transhumanist terror. Sam contributed the story Marky's Night Out, which is all about an automaton working in to stock and check in a convenience store. I don't know if I'm putting that correctly, but
yeah,
you know what I mean. If you heard the chat, you know what we're doing. Getting taken out of the store for a night on the town. And it's very funny, and it's incredibly well drawn, and everyone should support this Kickstarter so we can get it printed and get it to you.
Yeah.
You can also find my work at BWH Comics all over the internet. I'm bwhcomics.com. I'm at BWH Comics on Patreon, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. You can also find my work, Cospain, a weeb comic about cosplay and convention craziness, over at cospaincomic.com. All right. I think that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for us tonight. I don't know how often you stream or do anything like that. Do you have a sign off for people when they follow your work?
Gosh, I haven't been on Twitch. I Twitch streamed for like 5 years straight, and I haven't been on in like 3 years, and everyone messes me. I usually just say like, "Good night, everybody."
Good night, everybody. All right, that works. Thank you all for joining us, and until next time, rock on, guys, and never stop drawing.